grandes temáticas y además también temáticas sostenibles. Vamos a ponernos ahora mismo con el foco en el que se pone Alliance Bernstein a la hora de pescar las mejores oportunidades de inversión. ¿Cómo estudian el entorno complicado que tenemos en estos momentos económico? Bien, hablamos con Edward Bryan, es Portfolio Manager Sustainable Global Small Cap in Alliance Bernstein. Edward, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Well, as always, Edward, a pleasure to have you here. We are seeing how the search for investment opportunities has become paramount. We can say that we've seen an increasing interest in thematic funds that seek to exploit long-term megatrends that will reshape the economy and society, of course. Can you describe for us your approach to sustainable thematic investment?
Yeah, sure. So our goal is to generate attractive financial returns by investing in companies that are contributing to positive social and environmental outcomes. So more specifically, addressing key challenges facing the world can open up large investment and growth opportunities. And companies that take good care of their employees, of the environment, and other stakeholders can over time be less risky. So for a long-term investor like us, that's a good combination. So there's three key aspects of our strategy: sustainable themes, environmental, social, and governance, or ESG, consideration and integration, and engagement. So sustainable themes help narrow our focus on companies that are addressing some of society's largest and most persistent challenges, such as how to sustainably support 2 billion more people on the planet over the coming several decades, or addressing inequality and protecting the poor and vulnerable. Second key aspect is integrating ESG right into our bottom-up fundamental stock analysis and selection process. And this is done by a dedicated team of fundamental research analysts. We are not simply relying on external third-party research ratings. And then lastly, active ownership, engaging with companies to understand more about how they are mitigating and addressing the most material and most significant ESG risks facing their business, and in some cases encouraging positive change. So at the theme level, there's three themes that we're investing in today: climate, health, and empowerment. And one thematic framework that we found very helpful are the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which laid out some very important targets to achieve over the coming decade. And we think that companies, private companies, have a key role to play in addressing several of these goals. And all of the companies that we invest in must offer a product or service that contributes positively toward one or more of the Sustainable Development Goals.
Edward, the economic environment remains delicate. Central banks continue to struggle with inflation that has not ceased to worry us over the past year. As thematic investors, how are you positioning your portfolios given this current economic environment?
Yeah, so there's a few points I make. So firstly, themes provide us with exposure to long-term growth tailwinds that can persist even during times of weaker economic growth. So for example, electric vehicles are increasing as a proportion of new car sales, therefore outpacing overall industry growth. Internet service providers continue to increase in new high-speed internet capacity to meet our growing and seemingly limitless demand for more data. So companies that are exposed to these themes can still experience good growth despite a potentially weaker environment in the overall economy. And then at the company level, we're looking for businesses that can not only capture growth from the themes, but do so profitably. So we're investing in businesses that have good financial returns, have durable competitive advantages, which can help with pricing power, and have healthy balance sheets. So these types of businesses can be more resilient during downturns. And then lastly, I think one thing that's been made very clear over the past year or two is that valuation matters. It's not just about buying the most thematic growth companies. The price you pay matters to the return potential. So all the analysts on the team use a very similar detailed valuation model for the companies that we invest in. so we can be ready to take advantage of opportunities from volatility in the markets. So while we're not trying to predict the macroeconomic outlook from here, we like how the portfolios are positioned today.
And in the meantime, given you the analysis covering the healthcare sector, I would like to ask you if you can tell us about the opportunities that you are seeing within the health theme, especially, which are because I know it's a big universe, big investment universe, but where are you focusing in?
Yeah, so for well over a decade now, we've been researching and investing around the impact of the ever cheaper cost of reading DNA, otherwise known as DNA sequencing. So the cost of reading a human genome, the blueprint of life, has declined from hundreds of millions of dollars 20 years ago to just hundreds of dollars today. Right? This is an enormous, enormous decline in price, faster than even computing costs. And the reason that this is so important is because now researchers can afford to sequence a lot of genomes. And they have data analysis tools like artificial intelligence and machine learning to make sense of it all, to better understand what all of the differences in our genomes mean and how DNA causes disease. So this development, this trend, this declining cost has really turbocharged and accelerated research and discoveries in the area of biology. And one result of that has been this wave of new drugs in biotechnology pipelines. So researchers are using DNA sequencing, using DNA technologies to discover new medicines. And we saw how impactful this could be during COVID when researchers used the DNA from the virus to discover new medicines and vaccines. But this is happening in other areas, such as cancer. And the way that we're investing behind this trend is through what we call picks and shovels. So these are companies that are enabling these genetic discoveries and enabling the development of new medicines. And a couple of specific examples would include research tools, such as high-powered microscopes that can enable researchers to image down to levels of individual proteins and cells to understand what's actually driving disease. Clinical trial services. So these are companies that help biotech and pharma companies take a drug through the clinical trial process, making it more efficient, enabling medicines to reach patients faster. And then manufacturing and packaging these very complex biotech drugs, making sure that they can reach patients in a safe and efficient way. And if you consider how long it takes to develop a new medicine, it can take 10 to 20 years. And so if you think about all of the advances in science and technology over the past 10 years, those are just now working through clinical development. So the companies that are involved in this ecosystem have a long runway of growth ahead of them.
As you say, really important to see this evolution in health sector, in genome sequences, research in cancer. You published white paper on synthetic biology last year. Can you talk a bit about how that team is developing too?
Sure. So the core idea behind synthetic biology is that you can use biotechnology, the way that the drug industry has used it, to make many more things beyond medicine. Okay, so the way that biotech works is you take a gene, you take a stretch of DNA, let's say the DNA that encodes for insulin. You take that DNA, you put it into a cell, so let's say a yeast cell, for example, and then the yeast cell will use the genetic instructions to make insulin, which can then be put into a syringe and given to a diabetic. And so synthetic biology uses this same principle. So you can take the DNA from another organism and make something. So for example, you can take the DNA from a flower, from a rose, the DNA that encodes for the scented oil that makes the flower smell nice. You can put that DNA into a cell, and the cell will produce the scented oil that can then be used for fragrances or perfumes. And you can use this process for many other things. Vitamin E, vitamins for food, for instance, dyes, pigments for clothing, many, many other things. And importantly, this is not science fiction. There are many products all around us today that have ingredients, that have components, that have materials that are made using synthetic biology. McKinsey put out a report a couple of years ago that estimated that 60%, 60% of the physical inputs in our global economy can be produced using synthetic biology. And I think that's an underestimation. What we're seeing over time is that the cost and ease of using this technology to make things continues to improve. And so you're seeing more and more applications open up. And one of the benefits of synthetic biology is that it can be used to make things in a much more sustainable way versus traditional manufacturing methods. So we believe this will open up large growth opportunities for companies that are both harnessing the technology to make new products, as well as enabling the industry, helping push the industry forward. And it could be disruptive for companies that rely on traditional manufacturing methods to make things. So as you mentioned, we published a white paper. It's available online if you Google or search for Alliance Bernstein, the Synthetic Biology Revolution.
And Edward, finally, well, that's so interesting and fascinating. What's the most recent project the team has been working on?
Yeah, so our latest research project has been focused on biodiversity, and specifically this crisis of soil health and how that's affecting our food supply. So over the past 100 years, incredible advances in chemical science have produced all these synthetic chemicals like fertilizers that have helped improve farm yields and productivity, helping feed billions of people. But the issue now is that the level of productivity from farms has flattened out. It's not improving. And farmers can't simply apply more and more synthetic chemicals because it's having a negative impact on soil health, which is crucial for planting and for farms. And so we think we're now on the cusp of a new era in farm productivity driven by three specific areas: genomics, environment, and management. So on the genomic side, like biotech, using advances in DNA to understand how to improve the nutrition, how to improve the drought resistance of plants, really speeding up breeding of plants in a much more precise and targeted way. And then on the environment side, improving the local soil ecosystem on farms. So if you took one spoonful of soil, it would contain 9 billion microorganisms. So this is a very vital, very delicate, vital ecosystem for ensuring healthy plants. And there are products and services like microalgae delivery products that help support this vital ecosystem. And then lastly, the management of farms. So using sensors and satellites and data analytics to improve the efficiency of farming. So for instance, a sensor applied on a tractor can tell a farmer exactly where to apply fertilizer rather than spraying it all over the farm. So this helps protect soil, and it's actually very economically efficient for the farmer. So we think biodiversity is a very big, very important and growing area, and one that will open up a lot of attractive investment opportunities for companies while also addressing food security as well as environmental sustainability.
Edward Bryan from Alliance Bernstein, thank you so much for having us these few minutes. Thank you so much for bringing us this investment opportunity, the big trend in the health sector. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bien, pues nosotros nos quedamos con esa lectura. Nos hablaba Edward.